Hello, everyone, and welcome to the TDWI webinar program. I'm Andrew Miller, and I'll be your moderator. For today's program, we're going to talk about optimizing the cost of cloud data, and our sponsor today is Impetus. For our presentations today, we'll hear first from James Kobielus with TDWI, and after James speaks, we'll be joined by Shirish Bale with Impetus. Before I turn over the time to our speakers, I'd like to go over a few basics. Today's webinar will be about an hour long. At the end of the presentations, our speakers will host a question and answer period. If at any time during these presentations you'd like to submit a question, just use the Ask a Question area on your screen to type in your question. If you have any technical difficulties during the webinar, click on the Help area located below the slide window and you'll receive technical assistance. If you'd like to discuss this webinar on Twitter with fellow attendees, just include the hashtag TDWI in your tweets. If you'd like a copy of today's presentation, locate the resource window on the bottom right of your console. And lastly, we are recording today's event and we'll be emailing you a link to an archived version so you can view the presentation again later if you choose, or if you'd like to share with a colleague. Again, today we're going to be discussing optimizing the cost of cloud data. Our first speaker today is James Kobielus. He is the Senior Director of Research for Data Management at TDWI. Jim is a veteran thought leader, industry analyst, consultant, author, and speaker on analytics and data management. Over the past 3 decades, Jim has held analyst positions at Futurum Research, Wikibon, Forrester Research, Current Analysis, and the Burton Group. He also served as Senior Program Director for Product Marketing for Big Data Analytics for IBM, where he was both a subject matter expert and strategist on thought leadership and content marketing programs targeted at the data science community. At TDWI, Jim focuses on data management, which encompasses database platforms, data governance, data integration, master data management, data ops pipelines, and more. Please welcome Jim, and I'll hand it over to you now.
Thank you, Andrew. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you today on optimizing the cost of cloud data. In a few minutes, we'll have Shirish Bale from Impetus on to do both a presentation and to be my panelist today. But before we roll into the panel and Shirish's presentation, I'd like to provide a few comments, sort of setting the context for today's discussion. And one of the core topics we will hear discussed today, and Shirish will go into greater detail on it, is something called FinOps in this context. So really, we're talking about is controlling the cost of cloud data. I mean, the amount of data we're putting in the cloud is growing by leaps and bounds, and the workloads, the applications for this data are growing exponentially all the time. So that, of course, is a huge and growing cost center in most businesses. Cloud data, storing it, processing it, managing it, archiving it, and so forth. So, how can enterprises control the cost of cloud data when this resource is growing all the time and requiring expensive storage, expensive CPU, expensive bandwidth, and the like. So controlling the cost of cloud data. Enterprises are placing greater strategic emphasis on cloud data. It's not growing smaller. The workloads are not going to shrink. They're going to continue to grow, as will the cost if we don't act fast and proactively and apply a variety of techniques that fall under the heading of FinOps or cloud cost engineering and the like. Really, what we're talking about is one of the key challenges for enterprises managing cloud data is that it remains heavily siloed in many organizations by application or business domain or subject domain, stubborn silos that are under separate governance and management by different lines of business with no clear coordination in terms of centralization of storage and governance and the like in many organizations. Decentralization and hub and spoke organizational data models predominate in the cloud data arena in terms of enterprise practice. And what we're seeing is that we're seeing a wider distribution of data. Data is getting ever more distributed in multi-clouds and multi-platform and mesh environments all the way to the edge. The data is being moved hither and yon within these increasingly complex cloud environments. and migration activities in terms of data being migrated from a variety of legacy on-premises platforms to a variety of cloud environments all the time, which just adds to the complexity. Though ideally, the migrations should be towards more consolidated, converged, centralized environments. Sometimes this is not the case. We're seeing mesh architectures increasingly gain foothold in the enterprise. In fact, we at TWI Research, we have primary research from the past year, attesting to the fact that mesh and fabric and distributed architectures are gaining an increasing foothold. How do you manage all this? I mean, you have deeper stacks of cloud native data platforms and infrastructures to do things like real-time data ingest and transformation and cleansing and the like. So cloud data is getting ever bigger and more costly, or will get more costly unless we do a variety of things of a proactive nature to ensure that we are minimizing the cost of storing and processing and managing cloud data, and then we're aligning those costs with the business justification for those applications. In other words, that the costs are aligned with the ROI we're receiving from the data, from the analytics and other transactions that are utilizing that data. Minimizing silos, minimizing the wasting of cloud data capacity, underutilization is critically important under the broader heading of FinOps, which you can understand, and Shirish Bale will provide greater detail on this. You can understand FinOps as relating to DevOps, which is an enterprise practice and workflow to manage the continuous integration and deployment of applications in a fast-moving environment, where FinOps is a set of controls, applied financial controls, to the movement and the processing of the data that's needed to drive this new generation of applications. So FinOps is about minimizing silos and wasted cloud data capacity. It's about maximizing the visibility of cloud data utilization from end to end to know where your data is, how it's being processed, where it's being stored and managed, how it's being delivered downstream and into a variety of applications. The end-to-end data observability is critically important to understand not just the data itself, but the data pipelines from end to end, and how well and how efficiently they're being utilized. FinOps is also referring to the matching of cloud data utilization to changing business needs. So cost is not a poison, but rather cost is a necessary part of doing business, but making sure that as you're utilizing the necessary capacity for storing and managing cloud data, that it's in line with your needs, that you're not spending lots of money on storing and managing cloud data that's never being utilized for actual business applications. So this past year at TWI Research, we did a survey of data and analytics professionals and asked them a variety of questions about their enterprise practice in terms of data management and building and deploying analytic applications utilizing that data. So when we look at the challenges that FinOps approaches address, this whole notion of aligning your cloud data expenses with actual business needs. What are these growing business needs? First and foremost, it's all about supporting ever more sophisticated modern analytics. By far, what is the primary motivation, we ask respondents, for evolving your organization's data strategy? It's supporting modern analytics. And what is modern analytics? It's a variety of things. It's predictive analytics, it's machine learning, it's artificial intelligence. It's things that are coming fast and furious, and we're reading about it in the headlines all the time. Things like large language models to drive conversational AI chatbots such as ChatGPT and the like. These things are coming along very fast and furious. That's modern analytics. It depends on lots and lots of data and processing of that data and ever more complex models that are machine learning models that are being distributed across highly complex cloud environments over GPUs and other high performance processing substrates. So we move back a second. Skipped. Go here, Andrew. I think For some reason, Andrew, it has skipped my slides. And let me go back in here a second. Let me go to the next slide. And apologize, folks, for the, okay. I'm not seeing my next slide presenting here. I'll try it again. And Andrew, I'm not seeing it. You see my next slide being displayed, Andrew?
Yeah, the next one we have right here, Jim, is
okay. I'll
this
just
particular slide.
It's not displaying in my dashboard here, but I have the printout here, so I'll work from that while the audience is seeing it. So another FinOps challenge is that enterprise data organizations still are largely siloed, decentralized and hub and spoke. So getting your arms around all that scattered data is an increasing challenge for enterprise data managers. So when we did that survey, we asked the respondents, what kind of operating model does your organization have in place for its data functions? And hub and spoke and decentralized organizational models for managing data and analytics predominate. Really close to 3/4 of respondents reported some sort of a hub and spoke or a decentralized model where there's some various degrees of centralized coordination in terms of setting standards and providing policies for governance and management, but also for providing a centralized platform. But a lot of siloed environments are still very much out there in the enterprise data world. And moving to the next slide, which I'm hoping that the audience can see. Another FinOps challenge that we saw in this is shown by the results of the survey is that enterprises are deploying ever more complex cloud architectures. And those cloud architectures, multi-cloud and edge and mesh, are adding new, unexpected, and unprecedented costs. When we asked respondents what are the top challenges that they have faced managing their data in the cloud, what was clear is that the number one response was that the top challenges is integrating data across ever more hybridized cloud environments of public and private clouds that are being deployed together in a unified data and analytics environment. But also, the key challenge was data governance across complex cloud environments of public and private, but also where you have structured and unstructured data and different governance of policies are being applied to that. 12% of the respondents said that the cost of all this was more than they expected. And that actually was cited as the third most salient challenge that they face, which is at managing unexpected costs of ever more complex cloud data environments. And with that, now I will hand it back, and hopefully, Andrew, you can see the sponsor slide right now. And then we'll hand it back to Shirish.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, I believe the slides were showing up on our end, so hopefully that's the case for everybody else in the audience there. Quick reminder to our audience, if you have a question, you can enter it at any time in the Ask a Question window. We will be answering audience questions in the final portion of our program. This does bring me to our next speaker, Shirish Bale with Impetus. Shirish leads the DevOps and cost engineering practice and manages a multidisciplinary team at Impetus. He is passionate about delivering best technology solutions and his role to enhance delivery value by developing scalable, resilient, and secured systems. Shirish has more than 2 decades of experience in developing enterprise applications across all verticals and has made significant contribution towards creating technology accelerators, streamlining processes, and continuously innovating to improve customer deliveries. As an Agile evangelist and certified SAFe program consultant, he also mentors teams on Agile and enablement and transformation. Please welcome Shirish, and I will hand it over to you now.
Sure. Thanks, Andrew, and pleasure to be here, everyone. Good morning, good evening. So I think a great start by Jim on providing the context here. I just want to take a few minutes to introduce what we do at Impetus on cost engineering. So let me share my slide just to see if, let me know, Andrew, if this is visible. I'm going to share this in a moment. Is this visible?
Looks like it's loading. Yes, it is.
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Very good. So I think I'll take a few minutes to introduce, as I said, cloud cost engineering at Impetus. Uh, we have been involved in multiple areas of cost engineering, right? And as the name says, cost engineering, we start from cost consideration during design, right, and then the development, right at the start of the software development cycle, right. Then of course we move to the consumption and resource usage visibility. We look at waste identification and optimization recommendations. We have helped customers with show back and charge back implementations, which is one of the challenge, at least, which I have seen. Right sizing resources, right, and putting all automation in place to save cost eventually. These are some of our focus areas. And the kind of value that we have added, if you can see at the bottom of the screen, with our 360-degree focus on not only the infrastructure, cloud infrastructure, but as Jim was talking about, data platforms, the use cases, the application, the platform piece of it, right? Infrastructure as a service, or platform as a service, or even software as a service. We focus on all of that for cost improvements. Then we looked at the unified view for cost optimization. So it's just not one area of it, or one particular cloud, or multi-cloud or hybrid is our way to look at different cloud solutions. We have helped customers with cost savings up to around 50% in last almost like 6 years now. Uh, have automated a lot of places, created optimizations opportunities with a lot of automation levers. And in the process, we have a few accelerators. These are like some of the compilation of best practices, like we have used maturity models to assess on where we stand on the environment. And of course, we have also created one enabler with that can help us monitor, optimize, and recommend the cost. This is a multi-cloud cloud cost optimizer. I think I'll quickly cover that in the next slide. Let me know if it is visible. I'm trying to move this. I think I need to go to that platform to move this.
Yeah,
Is
we
it
can only
moving?
see the
Is it
title
moving?
slide. We can only see the title slide right
Okay.
now, Shirish.
Okay, it is not moving. I'm seeing a title slide. Did it move now? Is
No,
it showing multi-cloud cost optimizer?
no, it's still showing the title
Okay.
slide.
Okay, let me do it again.
So it looks like you're trying to advance the slides in the On24 system. If you can, on your PowerPoint, just use maybe the slides on the left-hand side of the column.
Yeah, that is what I did. Let's see if this changes. Does it move?
Yep, that's it. You got it.
Okay, all right. So I was talking about this multi-cloud cost optimizer. So this is a solution that we have created that helps us identify uh, costs. It supports multiple cloud. The best part is it integrates with a lot of on-the-shelf tools with different customers. It not only helps us reduce the cost, it helps us identify the bottlenecks way faster. Right? It has tag compliance tracking. It has budget violations that you can use. It has an inbuilt AI ML module that can help us have intelligent forecast or intelligent suggestions or recommendations for your cloud data points. And lastly, I think we have been working with large enterprises. Some of the noted ones I'm listing here, uh, as you can see on the screen, that we have helped them with huge cloud cost efficiencies. And it's not in a particular domain. I think we work on right from healthcare to banking to insurance, as you can see here. I think telecom for that matter, even airlines for that matter. So they're all domain agnostic. We have helped them in bringing up cloud cost efficiencies. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to cover on Impetus. Back to you, Andrew.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Shirish. And for our audience, thank you for understanding that we're trying to jump through a couple technical difficulties here today, so we appreciate your patience. These slides are available to be downloaded in the Resource Center if you'd like to refer back to them, and we will be sending out an archived version of this later. But thank you all for staying patient with us. I'm bringing back Jim now. We're going to move into the fireside chat. So Jim, back to you.
Thank you, Andrew. Shirish, thank you very much for the remarks. Let's move to our first question slide. And it's great to have you here to go in depth on FinOps. So first question, and I'm not sure how many of the audience are aware of what FinOps is. So I was wondering if you could start off by giving a crisp definition of FinOps, explain how it relates to DevOps, and what are the core principles of FinOps for cloud data cost engineering and optimization?
Sure. So absolutely, Jim. I think we all know, right? DevOps is something which bridges the gap between engineering and operations and streamlines the whole software development and delivery process. Now, FinOps is an extension, of DevOps, which bridges these silos between multiple teams, right? It's finance, engineering, technology, operations team. It's a framework that enables organization to get maximum business value by having collaboration between these teams so that they can take a data-driven decision and on the cloud spend particularly. Now, like in DevOps, we start thinking about deployment when you start development. It's always said that if you find a defect earlier in the software development lifecycle, cost of fixing that defect later is way higher. And likewise, if you can start thinking about cost right from design and development, that can help us budget better, that can help us manage costs better, because I think all of us know, right? It takes a couple of days for cloud cost to jump from $0 to $100,000, right? And it's the very nature of the cloud cost. It's very variable. It's dynamic, right? And when I've interacted with some of the customers, managers, or their directors, I've seen that sometimes they misunderstood this term FinOps, right? It is considered as financial operations. And they think that if this is a money-saving framework, basically, FinOps is nothing but it's a cultural practice to bring more agility and speed, and which enables, a lot of cross-functional conversation between different teams where they know what we are investing, how we are investing, what we are going to get out of it, and it's mainly a framework to make money rather than save money, right? And then these teams also, right? Somebody call it FinOps team, some are referred as a cloud economics team, cloud management team. There are different names that I've heard of, cloud financial management team. But essentially, it's one central team which comprises of product management, engineering, DevOps, procurement, finance, and team which brings accountability on cloud spend. Right? That is what the FinOps framework starts with.
You mentioned thinking about cost right up front in design of your cloud data utility. So do you need to have a fully built out total cost of ownership for an investment in cloud data platforms? Do you need a fully built out TCO model right up front? How can you anticipate every eventual downstream cost well enough to be able to plan for it or to factor it into your design? I'm curious.
Yeah. So I think, again, we all know, right, that the cloud enablement, offers a lot of flexibility, rapid development, faster time. And
Yeah.
COVID-19 has further accelerated this, right? Need for speed and agility. And then that provides a unique advantage, right? And all of the enterprises are taking this benefit, but many of the reports says that around 30% of the cloud spend is a waste, and that's why a lot of customers, a lot of enterprises are really looking at the cloud cost, which is really imperative, right?
So, in terms of how FinOps relates to DevOps, so DevOps is usually understood as continuous integration and continuous deployment of application code. Is FinOps really relevant to the application development cycle, or is FinOps more before all that in terms of setting up the application development platform and the application development team as a whole? Is FinOps really a staffing issue, like having the right people on your team to each of them with a cost consciousness? Is that how it relates to DevOps?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, Jim, right? So DevOps, as I said, right, it bridges those silos, and FinOps also bring in that aspect where you bridge the silos between different teams with an objective of, from a DevOps perspective, the objective is to accelerate and release the software as quickly as possible. Where if we extend DevOps to FinOps, you want to make sure that you are working with speed, you have this agility, and you're able to release a software within a particular budget with a good control on cost. So that's right. That is what FinOps does. Yes.
Right. Good. Okay. So Shirish, so in terms of what are the principal cost optimization challenges that managers of cloud data environments face? And how specifically does FinOps, as best practices, and you're free to cite any reference customer case studies you wish here, what are how does the FinOps principles enable enterprises to address each of these challenges effectively?
Absolutely. I think, again, the kind of experience that we have here with multiple customers, there are multiple challenges that we have seen when we were working with them, right? So I think, and I can speak about some of them at least, which are which I could think of. Many times I've seen that, particularly large enterprises, right? Their approach to procure and utilize cloud is still traditional. I mean, it's like the way they would buy hardware, they would think for cloud in similar fashion. They will go for an RFP, they will look for this many CPU that I need, this much hardware which I need, and then they still stick to an older model, which is based on a fixed cost, rather, and we all know cloud is more of dynamic, right? So that's one thing which I've seen. Another thing is, I think the cloud cost is a little complex than what we think of, right? Because every component in the cloud, right, from object storage to networking to data transfer to compute, I think all of them is available as pay as you go, right? And then managing all of them, that becomes more complex and more dynamic. So this is another thing which I've seen. And again, when we work with customers, we have seen that rather they have over provisioned the resources. In most of the cases I've seen, it is over provisioned rather than under provision. And they get us involved when they saw that their bills are going up to like 300,000 a month, 200,000 a month. And then because they just got into it without even understanding the future needs. On day one, you may need this, but what's happening in the future, who is using, which teams will be using that, right? So there is this lack of this high level of understanding of the application, the platform, even the infrastructure, even in some cases skill as well. I think some of the teams that are involved with, they're not clear on a lot of cloud components, the way they've been used, right? And lastly, I think there's a lack of unified visibility. I think you also covered that challenge, but this is, at least with the executives that we are interacting with, we are seeing uh, they don't know. I mean, some teams are using AWS, some teams are using GCP, some teams are using hybrid, but at the end of the month or in the week, they don't know how much they are spending, and there's no way for them to get that right. So that is another challenge which I've seen, uh, which is very very predominant, particularly in the cloud investment journey.
Do the FinOps principles help organizations to guide, provide guidance on the choosing of a cloud data solution provider, the likes of AWS or Google or Azure, or does FinOps provide guidance on choosing whether to go with say a serverless data environment versus a containerized like Kubernetes cloud data environment, or is FinOps sort of agnostic to those various approaches?
It is agnostic, Jim. Yeah, it is agnostic to those. I think it's a framework which provides you, the way to approach it, but it will not tell you which technology, which solution that you should. I think that's what I said. It depends on the cloud economics team. The framework suggests that we should have one central team. That central teams takes care of those decisions, and they are the best, I think, decision makers for which to go, what service and which cloud to go for. I think FinOps will not recommend that, right? In the way we do it is, we have come up with a lot of best practices around, let's say, as I said, cloud architecture model, or we have, cloud data platform architecture model best practices. So when we assess, we look at what is being followed, what is not being followed, and based on that, we could quickly see what is needed there, right? And it may require a little bit of discussion as well. And it is all agile. I mean, it doesn't happen that within like one day some magic wand will come and will give you what you need to use. I think it goes over iterations, and then we could choose what we can go for.
Right. Moving to the next question. What's the recommended first step for enterprises who want to adopt FinOps principles and adopt cloud data, and then use FinOps to help them manage the cost of this investment? What's the recommended first step on that journey? Is the first step to be taken from the top down by the likes of a chief data officer, or is the first step to be taken lower down by the lines of business, or really is it a two-step dance actually, top down and bottom up? So what's the recommended first step on this journey?
Yeah, very interesting question, I think. And again, in some cases, we have seen that, Jim. I think somebody has to act like a change agent. And if you want to bring a change to any of the traditional practices, one person has to become a change agent. He must be a person who knows, who understands this, and it starts from educating the stakeholders about the initiative. We tell them about FinOps, we tell them about best practices of FinOps, we tell them why it is important, and we have done this with many customers, and explain them the current state and the pain points. Why the leaks are happening. How can it be avoided? I mean, this is money on the table. We can definitely save that, right? And enroll them to form a team. Now, many times, you need to have engineering members in the team as well, who understands technology, who understands, as you said, Kubernetes, containers. I've seen not many IT folks or finance folks would even understand what Kubernetes is, what containers is, right? And which service to be used from AWS on containers, right? So you form that team, which is central team, and then you define the accountability matrix for the cloud migration assignments. So who will be doing what on applications, on platform, engineering folks are the best folks to define, compute, storage, networking, and of course, the architects can review that, right? And as I said in the beginning, even uh, skill is an issue. We have seen many times when product managers who are working with customers, right? Even they don't know much about cloud. We have asked them to go through various tutorials on cloud computing, fundamentals of computing. We went across and trained some of the customer teams on some of this basic stuff where we help them to come up with let's say critical asset identification and classification, even identify priority applications, priority data, priority environments, what would be planned for security, recoverability of your applications, or how are we going to continue business, right? Business continuity, how it will be implemented. And then finally, what are our guardrails? I think the sponsors would always talk about their goals, their objectives on how much monthly spend that they could have, what are high level budgets, and how we will to forecast. So these are first steps that at least we have seen in our experience that when we work with customers, uh, this is where we align, and it takes a little bit of time to do that, but it is worth spending to this because once it is done, I think the next process becomes a little easier.
Hmm. So moving to the next question. So we talked about first steps, but in many ways the end game is better ROI. So what approaches should enterprises adopt to get a better ROI on the financial performance of their investments in cloud data? Cutting costs, yes, but are there things they can do on the upside in terms of boosting revenues from unlocking the value of cloud data?
Right. So, correct. I mean, so what I recommend is, a three-step approach here, and this is what even we also follow. But I've seen most of the places it works, where the first step is assess, the second step is manage, and the third step is optimize. Now, in the assess phase, we look at the current state, we look at the cloud footprint, right? We understand how many teams are using cloud, what are different services that they are using, which workloads that they're running, what kind of applications are these, what is the tech stack of the application, what are the databases that they are using, right? Are they using any automation in it? How are they delivering the software? And then you know use some of these best practices, which let's say we have a lot of maturity models. So during assessment, apply those maturity models to the system which is going through this digitization journey, and identify maybe low hanging items, right? And other improvement areas which you can clearly state out of the assessment phase, that these are few things which you could do in next 3 weeks, 2 weeks, and we'll see a good amount of improvement on cloud spend. So that's assessment. Then we have a manage phase where we start looking at the spend, right? And looking at trends on how this is going on, let's say week over week, month over month. Do we have control on the cloud spend? Are different teams, spending cost in an effective way? Are we able to charge back and show back to different teams? Do we have proper alerting in place? So in basic management, we start doing all of these activities, right? And this helps in managing the budget and understanding trends for even future spends as well. So which is the manage phase. And the third phase is optimize, uh, where we start looking at the data and trends, and you know and different tools also, right? I mean, they start giving a lot of recommendations on, what to optimize, right? Which new rules can be created? What are different automation activities for, let's say, security automation, or there are a lot of compliance automation that we would like to do, right? And on top of it, there are so many data points. So can we do some more contextual analysis to find out areas and optimize further? So this is three-step approach that I would suggest, and this is more iterative in nature. So in many of the cases, with our experience, sometimes we start with optimize, sometimes we start with manage, sometimes we start with the assessment phase when we are starting fresh. But eventually, this has to be iterative in nature, where you go to assess, you manage, optimize, then again come back to assess, look for improvement, start managing it, and then keep optimizing it. So that this is the approach, Jim, that I would recommend.
Thank you, Shirish. In fact, you have just mostly answered this question, the next one I was going to ask you. So I'll rephrase this question. What would you say is the top best practice or strategy for cloud cost optimization where data management is concerned? What is the number one thing that cloud data managers should do, first and foremost, to keep a lid on costs?
Yeah,
For
I
all the
think,
things you mentioned.
yeah. I mean, this is, again, there are so many. I mean, with the
Yeah.
examples that we have worked with, there's so many, but let me talk about a few important ones, which at least I feel that, and I'm sure the audience will always also relate to that. They must have seen some of these. Uh, so, you know, I think one of the things which I want to start with is shift left. I think we all know what shift left is, where I think, as I said in the beginning, it's mostly a mindset where you start looking at the cost optimization from day zero, right? And it should not be an afterthought, where one should look at cost element very, very proactively. That's one. Right sizing, is another best practice or a strategy which is very proven, right? We can optimize resources during development cycle, and come up with right sizing. Now, this may take, as I said, iterations, and then we may enable extended monitoring option to right size. Later, we can switch back to basic monitoring. Usage of serverless services, transient resources, reserved instances, a lot of other things, right? Basic monitoring of resources. In case if you see the utilization of resources is less than 70-80%, it's a quick recommendation where you can downgrade the instance immediately, right, and save cost there. And we know this, right, in a week or 2 weeks time. In case if you're looking for long running resources, consider saving plans, like reserved instances that can help you save 50%. In some cases, even spot instances, right? During development, you could run spot instances and save a good amount of cost. Sorry, Jim, you were saying something? Yeah.
No, I didn't want to cut you off. And you also mentioned in the previous response, automation. I heard that word. Clearly automating more of the functions involved in sourcing and processing and managing and monitoring of your cloud data resource can pay off in scalability, but also controlling your need to hire people to staff up to do these things.
Absolutely. I think automation. Yeah. I think the automation is, you're right, Jim. Design automated flows to spin up resources, onboarding the application use cases, spawning the platform resources, or spinning up infrastructure. If you could automate all of that, I think, it can accelerate not only the delivery time, which is a byproduct of it, but it can also help us save cost. That's right.
Right. And before we get to the audience Q&A, I have one last question for you on this panel. And feel free to cite any specific customers who are doing this. How are real-world enterprises controlling cloud costs? Are there any shining examples of organizations that are doing it right on many fronts that you'd like to call out?
Oh, sure. I think there are many. Let me talk about one of the customer is a B2B customer. They have a solution on inside sales and renewal management for enterprises, and we are helping them in modernizing their cloud platform, with an objective of cloud saving. They have been using Salesforce Cloud. However, they were unable to ingest high velocity customer data using Salesforce and other in-house CRM applications. And moreover, delaying data sync was creating multiple versions of truth, creating an inconsistent picture for their customers. Now, as a part of our solution, we created a microservice architecture for them and moved their containerized services to Kubernetes platform on AWS. Now, This addresses the performance and scalability issues for them. This has reduced the deployment time, because of this quick rollback mechanism for microservices, and which enabled them like frequent releases and almost like zero downtime. And the solution was not just migrating it to the containerizing services to Kubernetes. We have also automated the entire infrastructure setup and the deployment pipeline with Jenkins and Flux CD and automation around all the remaining manual stuff, where they were able to deploy the APIs in less than 2 minutes and onboard new customers like 5 times faster, right? And with all of these activities, they were able to save their monthly bills, at the end of like maybe like 4 months or 4.5 months by over 60%. And the end result was they could onboard more customers since onboarding was faster. They could create a better ROI on this. So this is one example, Jim. Uh, Another example where we have been working with a leading provider of engineering systems for a semiconductor and electronics industry. They were looking for moving their on-premise fall detection platform to cloud to reduce cost and allow more pilots for their customers. I think their data was growing on-premise, their customer base was growing, and they wanted to move it to cloud to take cost advantage. And it was really become expensive for them to maintain and scale an on-premise environment. So we helped them create an AWS infrastructure, right from the capacity planning of instance type, we chose within a higher instance, but eventually optimized to an M4 large EC2 instance with around 60% CPU utilization. We, automated with Terraform their whole, infra creation, and in such a way that wherever their customer is in that region, it will get spawned with a managed RDS and, automated Hadoop environment that would get created. The RDS storage was, of course, like around 1 TB after considering the current usage and future needs. And they were able to even eventually save 30% of their cost on AWS right from the first set of that date versus now they are doing multiple pilots with a lot of their end customers. So these two are like case studies which I wanted to share with Jim.
Very good. Shirish, thank you. This ends the panel. I'm going to hand it back to Andrew because I see questions coming in from the audience. So I want to get into audience Q&A right away.
Yeah, terrific. Thank you both for that great conversation. Very insightful. We'll move into the audience Q&A now. Shirish, this question will be for you. We do have a few coming in here for you, so mostly they'll be for you. But Jim, if you'd like to add your 2 cents, please feel free. So Shirish, how can investments in cloud data observability tools help enterprises achieve their FinOps goals?
Oh, okay. Yeah, a good question. I think, again, I've seen, customers in double mind sometimes, a little confusion on whether to stick to the cloud tools, cloud cost tools, which all the providers provide, or should we go for third-party tools? I think cloud tools are useful if the usage is less and controlled. However, in most of the enterprises, I think cloud adoption scales with multiple teams real quick. There are multiple accounts, and then the standard cloud tools, they struggle to provide proactive information to save cost. I think the objective of these cloud tools largely has been billing and invoicing, and it is considered for mostly finance teams as being the owners of them. And as I mentioned, right, the focus for cloud cost engineering is more on intelligent recommendation, anomaly detection, optimization, more of contextual analysis of data points, unified dashboard, and then multi-cloud support even, right? Say there are many tools which would support multi-cloud, right? And these environments today, customers would have multiple clouds, automated capabilities to bring down, let's say, unused resources. So net, I think I feel investments in such tools can really help, to achieve our cloud spend goals.
I'd like to add that, yeah, everything that Shirish said. For example, data observability tools, if you're a data engineer, these tools become very useful for visualizing the flow of things like extraction, transformation, and loading processes from end to end within your data infrastructure. So you can determine to what extent you have sufficient processing capacity throughout the pipeline to support all those functions, for example. So that ensures that you are always proactively able then to provision capacity where it's needed as it's needed. So you don't have any nasty surprises. You don't have any performance degradations in the downstream applications that depend, in this case, on having cleansed, conformed data to operate upon. So there's a variety of ways in which these data observability tools help you to ensure a healthy pipeline for the data processes and help you to ensure that you are balancing the utilization of expensive resources in line with actual demand for those resources in real time. That's one example if you're a data engineer, but there are uses for data observability, across really many different roles, whether you be a data architect or a data scientist or an IT professional in general, that make it worth your while to invest in them and really to help you to optimize your cloud cost from end to end.
Terrific. We'll move on to the next question here, again for you, Shirish. Can you share any use cases from the FinServ industry for optimizing cloud spending for much better ROI? Something you may have touched on, but perhaps you can speak to another example.
Okay. I think, I did not speak about the FinServ, but okay. Let me talk about this. So we have been working with, one of the global provider for insurance and brokerage, where we have helped them build a modern data platform on AWS. So we implemented, all the practices, and this is where I think we started from scratch, where we build everything, right from day one, ground zero. We understood their requirements, and if I had to quote an example, the object storage, right, setting up the S3 lifecycle rules on what data to keep and how long. And if I can share, I think we started with optimizing the S3 usage. We started using S3 standard tier, then we went to the intelligent tier. Eventually, we implemented the Glacier part, where in terms of how long you want to keep data in these 3 tiers, again to save cost, right? This is a good example of where we understand their needs and then start optimizing the resources, right? We also found out that one of their team was using EMR, and the solution that we were using identified that these EMRs were up and running even over weekends when nobody was using it. And by identifying and shutting those off during weekends, we could save around 10 to 15% of the cost. Plus, we automated that initiation of those EMR clusters where the need was transient. So again, we ended up saving cost there. We created the whole AWS serverless pipeline for this firm, and that has also helped us save cost, so much so that it started reflecting for this particular division that where we're working with. And one of our architect was actually was called out to be the part of the cloud cost management team, the FinOps team for that, with an objective of applying it across different divisions and different cloud accounts for this customer. And I think this time from last 3 quarters or so, what we have seen is their cloud bills have been reduced by around 25%, which is significant saving. And I think their bills are monthly bills are over 500,000, 600,000 a month. So I think that's one from a I would say FinServ kind of industry.
That's great. Terrific. We'll move on to the next question here. Do any specific cloud environments provide better cost efficiencies compared to other clouds?
Oh, okay. I think Jim did ask that earlier as well. As I said, ideally, I don't think, selecting a cloud provider is just on the basis of cloud efficiency. We need to look at extensibility and future requirements and how they'll be supported by the selected cloud. The cost depends on number of factors, right? I mean, choice of instances, your discount offered by different cloud, the use of your reserved resources or other saving plans. It also depends on which service we are using, right? Infra as a service or platform or software as a service or all of them, right? Now, for the sake of comparison, I think if you want to compare big three cloud providers, AWS, GCP, and Azure, I mean, to me, GCP seems to be most economical. But at the same time, AWS has multiple ways to get better deals using saving plans or reserve instances. I know maybe audiences are knowing AWS started with per second billing. They are the first one, but Azure and GCP has also started offering now per second billing. Right? So it is very important to analyze the use case and scenario under consideration and then decide. Like AWS has multiple ways, right, to run containers, as Jim was saying earlier. Like we do have Fargate, we have ECS, we have EKS, we have AppRunner. As against other provider, right? Maybe GCP would have only one way to run it, and one can optimize by the cost in AWS by selecting an appropriate service. Similarly, if you look at security services from AWS, we have AWS Macie, we have GuardDuty or WAF services, while Macie focuses on security of your S3 storage, GuardDuty focuses on threat detection, and WAF focuses more on web application or malicious attacks to your application. They have separate, I would say focus areas, but you get that liberty to choose, and then based on your requirement, and that could prove out to be more economical for you. So I think there is no such magic wand to choose any particular specific cloud environment. It depends actually. This is one of the questions where the answer most of the time it depends on what is the application, what is the platform, what is the context, and what you're going to use it, how you're going to use it.
I'll answer in a provider agnostic manner. So one way to approach this in terms of what cloud environment provides greater cost efficiencies than others, serverless cloud environments like cloud generally, SaaS-based, pay-as-you-go, where serverless has great efficiencies associated with, you're only paying for the resources you're using. There's no dedicated resources. You're scaling up and scaling down as needs change dynamically. So there's efficiencies for doing that. But also getting to something that Shirish is saying, when you go with a cloud provider and they are offering various instances, and an instance is really a package of processing power and storage and so forth associated with a particular demand profile. Don't over-purchase. Don't buy larger instances than you think you're going to need to support your peak requirements. So make sure that you align your spend on cloud instances with your actual realistic needs or demands. That way you won't overspend. But yeah, also very much you just need good data observability tools that allow you to determine with a fine granularity what you're actually utilizing. So going forward, you can maybe throttle down or throttle up your CPU usage or your storage usage, depending on what your actual demand profile is. So, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to say one solution provider is more cost efficient than another, because they all offer you these capabilities. You just have to, as the user, sort through your options and your requirements, and then you can find the best package, as it were, of cloud data capabilities for your needs from any of them.
All right, I think we have time for one last question. So Shirish, how do we charge back in shared cloud environments with multiple teams?
Oh, okay. I think this is one of the common questions that we've seen with large enterprises, particularly where customers are looking for visibility of costs on multiple scenarios, ranging from simple even to a complex one. Now, chargeback on shared cloud environments. I think one of the easiest way to achieve this is by using separate accounts for each team. This may be a resource group in Azure or projects in GCP, but as you grow, right, there would be hundreds of accounts, and it will be difficult to manage these hundred of accounts. So that's why, although it is easy, but not recommended. The other way is to assign specific regions to specific team. But as we go into multiple regions, it involves extensive governance and automation to make sure that this is followed with a rigor. And the complex case is when different teams are using same accounts, right, and services. Now, in that case, I think tagging becomes one of the most important best practice, where based on tagging policies, we can attribute cost of running resources to those teams. In case these teams are using shared services like RDS or Redshift, in one of the example, I think there were multiple teams who were using same Redshift instance, right? So how would you distribute cost? Now, based on the team's usage, what we did is we assigned a weightage to an overall cost for the resources and distribution. It's distributed across the teams. For example, in case of Redshift, like we put weights, and then assign a weight based on the number of tables, the size of queries executed by that team. Now, these are some of the ways I think where chargebacks can happen in shared cloud environments.
Terrific. Well, unfortunately, this does bring us to the end of our time today. So I'd like to thank our speakers. Thank you both, James Kabilas with TDWI, Shirish Bale with Impetus. I also like to thank Impetus for sponsoring today's webinar as well. Please remember that we did record today's webinar, and we'll be emailing you a link to an archived version of the presentation. Also, don't forget, if you'd like a copy of today's presentation, locate the resource window on the bottom right of your console. Lastly, I'd like to remind you that TDWI offers a wealth of information, including the latest research reports and webinars about BI, data warehousing, and a host of related topics. So I encourage you to tap into that expertise at tdwi.org. And from all of us here today, let me say thank you very much for attending. This does conclude today's event.